our author of the evening will be talking to our very own mystery author, one of many that we enjoy having here at the store, Patricia Skalka, and her books, by the way, are up front. Just to ask us where they are, and we'll be happy to show you. And she'll be talking to our featured author of the evening. She's the author of the Cass Rains Chicago Mystery Series. She's here to talk about the second book in her Detective Harriet Foster series. This one's called Fall. Please welcome Tracy Clark.
Testing. Oh, it's working.
We're good.
I recognize some people from the restaurant. You were there. Yeah. I said, oh, they came in. Oh, good, good. Okay. Well, I just want to tell you that Tracy is, first of all, a fantastic person. She's also a magnificent writer. And if you, which you will find out if you haven't already. So I'm very pleased to be sitting here with her. We both grew up on the south side of Chicago. She still lives there. I moved here. And we both write mysteries, and we both went to the same high school, although obviously many years apart. So it is an absolute pleasure on my part to be sitting here with Tracy. And I wanted to start by asking her to start at the beginning because she was on Morning Blend this morning, and something that was said caught my attention, and that was that you were a sophomore in college when you decided you wanted to write. Now, I don't know what were you studying in college, and then why did you decide to write, and what did you write?
Well, I started writing actually when I was 12.
Oh, okay.
I'm like that weird kid who had a notebook under their mattress with stories that nobody saw but me. But I started to really think about writing sophomore year of college because I was living with this for so long. I wanted to write. I wanted to be a writer. Nobody I knew was a writer. I didn't grow up around writers. Nobody, my parents knew were writers. I mean, so it was a weird thing for a kid from the south side of Chicago to say, I want to be a writer. And so I hid it for quite a few years, writing in private, writing my own stories. Nobody saw them. My mother didn't see my first book until it came in a box at my door. And that's how long it had been. So sophomore year of college, I decided I'm going to do it. I'm not going to hide it under the mattress. I'm going to try to write like grown-ups. And so that's when it started. And so I took every writing class in college. I had taken every elective in English in high school secretly. Nobody knew. Okay, hush, hush. So, I mean, everything, nonfiction, fiction, repertorial writing, humor writing, whatever writing class they had, I took it. And so that's what I did. I wrote my little pages. I threw most of them away. I took whatever writing class there was. It's crap. It's not good. I knew it wasn't good, but you have to start somewhere. And so I just kept writing, kept writing, kept writing. Frustrated, frustrated, frustrated. That's the job we have. And then this hubris came over me when I finished what I thought was a book. And I sent it off in a little envelope. That's back in the day when you had to mail them. And so I put it in this manila envelope. Oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be just like To Kill a Mockingbird. This is going to be wonderful. This is going to be great. And then a couple of weeks later, the little thin envelope comes back, and that's how they used to let us know that, And so now you're bereft, and you thought this is going to be it. It's not. So I knew that I had more things to do. And so I saved all of those rejection letters, every last one of them, and I would just put them aside and I'd keep going. And that went on for more than 20 years, more than 20 years. Thinking I had it, I didn't have it. Rejection letter would come back. I'd start again.
Was your first book, the one you sent out, was it a mystery?
They were all mysteries
Oh, they
because
were.
that's kind of what I like to read. And, the wisdom was write what you like to read and, write what you know. That's bull, by the way. I mean, write whatever you feel like writing. But I wrote mysteries, I read mysteries. And so that's what I sort of envisioned for myself. And that first book was Broken Places. When it got rejected several times, I went back and I tore it apart and put it back together again, sent it out again, reject it again. And so then, I mean, 20 years that went on. And then at a certain point, there were 2 years there when I got so frustrated that I put it into a drawer and left it. And I said, well, obviously this is not for me. I've got my job, I'm good. Um, Maybe that's just it. But then, it sort of niggles at you, doesn't it? I mean, you can see it in the drawer, you can feel it, it's talking to you. The book knows it's there. I know the book is there. And so at a certain point, I just had to dig it out again, dust it off, and start again.
And I'll tell you, it's a magnificent book. I read that book and I could feel, I mean, I know those places and I could feel the grit under my nails. I mean, I could just see, it was just, I can't believe that book, well, you obviously changed it and changed it and changed it.
I changed it, I tore it apart, I put it back together again. There's some writers, the wisdom is, well, if this doesn't sell, move on to the next thing. I'm too stubborn. I don't, maybe that's the south side of Chicago in me. I just couldn't. And so I stuck with this book because I thought there was something in there. It might not have been ready for prime time, but I knew that there was a kernel of something in there that was valid. And so I just kept at it. And then one of these rejection letters that came back had a little bit of advice at the bottom. I kind of like this. I can see where it's going. I would suggest that you join a writer's workshop and see what they can do. And so that's what I did. Now I'm an introvert.
You
You know
sound
this.
like one.
Yeah. And so for me to sort of go out and find a writer's workshop in Chicago, it took me a couple of months, I can't gonna say days, but months before I worked up the energy, I mean, the confidence to just sort of find one, punch the button, get in there and go. And that's what I did. I found one, north side. I'm from the south side, so going to the north side was like going to the moon. But I would work my day job at 5 o'clock, 5:30, and then I would schlep all the way up to the north side to this writer's workshop. And I did that for 2 years, every Wednesday, 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock, with the Cubs game in the Wrigley Field a block over. So that's what I did. 2 years, I worked on that first book again for the millionth time. And at the end of that process, the instructor, Mary Carter with Writer's Workshop, said, I think it's good enough. I'm going to show it to my agent. I said, yeah, right. Okay, I've shown it to every agent known to man, but go ahead. And so she did. And a couple of weeks later, he said, I would like to represent you. Okay, so now that was great. I was at work doing the Broomhilda comics and the little email popped up and that was him. And so there it is. So now that just sort of starts the process. That book, as I was getting rejected, I just kept writing. So when they took that first book, I had 2 other ones that were already done. And so they took all 3. And so that's how my writing career started.
Wow. And I would just like to add that Broken Places has been optioned
It has by Sony Television.
by Sony Film. So yeah, perseverance pays off. Okay.
Yeah.
How many books and short stories have you published?
One short story. I figured I'd practice before I wrote my novel. I said, how hard can it be? I'm gonna start with a short story, sort of get my feet wet. And so I wrote that first short story. I sold it for $5. I framed the $5 check, still have it. And then I said, well, that was pretty good. That felt pretty good. I'm gonna write a book now. Boy.
Yeah, a big difference.
Yeah, isn't it? So let's see, 4, 5, 6. I just handed in 7. I have one more on the contract that I'm on now. That will be 8. And then we'll see what happens after that.
And I would just like to add that Tracy and I were talking over dinner and I said, well, what is your writing process? She still works full time.
Mhm.
She gets up at 5:30. This is for all of you who say I don't have enough time to write. And she works for 2 hours, 2.5 hours,
Till 8 o'clock.
and then goes to work for 8 hours.
Mhm.
And then does it again the next day. She worked on Christmas Eve because she had a deadline looming. This is for all of you who think it's easy. And she worked on Christmas Day because she had a deadline looming.
Yep.
That's what it takes. And you don't have a writing, I mean, you don't have like a word count that you aim for. You just have that time.
Right.
You have to end at a certain time.
I can either get a chapter done, half a paragraph done, a sentence done. I've done a sentence. But yeah, whatever I do in that 2.5 hours is all I've got for the day. And then hopefully the next day will be
Yeah.
better.
The pandemic was a very good friend to Tracy because it eliminated a commute. So when she goes to work, she basically closes one computer and opens the other one.
Yep.
So sitting at her desk,
Yep.
but that's nice. There's something I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to know why you were writing crime fiction. Well, you said you were always read it, so you were drawn to it. In the acknowledgments of this book, you thank 3 police officers, 2 retired, 1 still active. So I was wondering, were they family, friends?
Yes, family and friends, brother-in-law. We got a lot of cops in my family. So, and they have partners, which is sort of doubles. And so when I started this series, the first series, PI series, her background, this character, is that she's an ex-homicide detective turned private investigator. And I had absolutely no idea about the job she gave up for this. And so I took a couple of female detectives to breakfast. Cops love to talk. And all you have to do is ply them with donuts or whatever, and they'll tell you whatever. So I wanted to know why they had this job. Why would they choose this? This is the toughest job in the world. And they told me what they do and why they do it. And they told me the challenges that they face on the street and wherever. And a lot of that stuff I didn't use, but I needed it for the foundation, the mindset. Why would somebody choose it? What are the challenges that they face, female officers as opposed to male officers? And then that stuff that you file away and you put in there, and as you build this character, some of that comes through, some of it is just there to use later, but you have that foundation, and then that's where I start. So I don't outline or anything. We talked about that too. Um, Outlining writers are probably smarter than the rest of us. The rest of us are pantsers, and we sort of fly by the seat of our pants, and we sit down there on that in front of that blank laptop or that legal pad or whatever, and whatever we come up with, that's where we start. So that's how I am. I'm a pantser writing. I'm a pantser in life. I have no idea how I'm going to get back to the hotel today, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, so that's how I do it.
And does it very well, I might add. I looked up some statistics. The Chicago Police Department has 11,720 sworn officers. Of those, 1,070, approximately 1%, are detectives. Of those, 25% are women, which is way above the national average, and 27% of the command staff are women. The national averages are 12% and 3%, so Chicago's way ahead of them there. But what you did in the second book is you have Harriet, who is the lead detective, and she is obviously a woman. She's a Black woman. So this is in the minority among this 25%. And her partner is Vera Lee, who's Asian. So this is not the one thing I couldn't find out is how many how many women are paired together, and probably very few, if any. So I think you're kind of groundbreaking there. One of the things they encounter, of course, is some resentment. They're called girl cops, which they do not like, but they have to prove themselves. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who Harriet is and what she's up against in fall?
Well, Harriet, like most female detectives or officers, are in a department that was not set up for them. And so they have to deal with whatever they sort of deal with. I mean, we got curmudgeon cops who've been there 30, 40 years. They don't let girl cops, they sort of suspect them of not sort of being smart enough or tough enough. They don't want to partner with them, some of them. And then you have, on the other hand, progressive cops who are fine. The newer cops, the younger cops are great. I mean, so when I put Harriet in that first book, she's standing on the sidewalk and she's had this horrible thing happen to her. And she has to sort of decide whether or not she wants to go in and continue to be the police or whether she's going to do something else, but she doesn't know how to do anything else. And so that's where we meet her. And then I give her the worst partner that I can possibly give her. Okay, so now we've got this dilemma. She's got this grief, this trauma that she's dealing with on the sidewalk, deciding whether or not she wants to continue being who she is. And I give her the worst possible partner. He's terrible. He's just terrible. And she has to, with that partner, find a serial killer who's killing women with red hair and blue eyes. and dumping the bodies all over the city, hence the title Hide. So under the Riverwalk, under Lower Wacker, places that are hidden. So I pile it on. I love giving characters more than I think they can handle, because that's when you figure out who they are, right? I mean, if they're just sort of sitting in a chair, musing about their day, you don't know what they're made of. So I give them as much as I can give them, and then see what they can do with that. So that's Harriet. She's got this personal thing. She's a wonderful detective. While she's working, she's absolutely brilliant. And then when she goes home, she's sort of like a clock with no hands. She's stuck in inertia. And she's got this half-life going on. And I kind of love exploring that half-life. What's going to pull her out of the hole? What's going to get her to the next level? I'm still figuring that out. We're 2 books in. I've just finished the 3rd one. She's a little further along in her journey. Not quite there, because I like the mess. I like the tension. I like the conflict. I like the fact that she's mired down with all of this and hasn't figured out how to fix herself. So she's a little better in Echo, not a lot. And, I like it. So
Well, and Echo isn't out yet, but Fall, she is, I mean, the opening scene in Fall is absolutely fantastic. It has nothing to do with what she's eventually going to be dealing with in terms of the crime, but it really tells you where she is at personally and what she is struggling with and how hard it is. And then right smack dab in the middle of the book, while she's dealing with a serial killer and, her curmudgeonly partner, not partners, but the rest of the team, Tracy drops another huge, massive problem into her lap, which is not, yeah. I mean, I thought, whoa, wait a minute. You can't do this to this poor woman. But, it's like life, right? You're sailing along and everything's pretty lousy. And then something else happens that's even lousier. And what I thought was really brilliant, I'm getting toward the end of the book and I thought, all right, they're figuring out who did it, but the other problem is still this big black ghost hanging, swirling around back here, threatening her, and it's not resolved. So I know that's going to carry over. I mean, obviously, I like that you give her something and then it carries over into the next book.
And that's how most of us live, right? I mean, we don't sort of live in this linear place. I mean, we work, we have family, we have responsibilities, we have things, we have mess, we have challenges. And nothing sort of comes when we want them in an order that we want them in. It piles on at times. And so that's what I wanted to do with Harriet. I wanted to give her something that put her in a hole so deeply, but yet she still has to function. And she still has to go out there in the streets and figure out what's going on, why these women are dying. And she's still stuck.
Yeah.
So yeah, as much as I can give her, as much as I think is plausible, as much as I think that's sort of gonna move her to the next thing, the next tick, that's what I kind of like to do.
And in Fall, it's not women who are being killed. It is city of Chicago. They are aldermen.
Come on.
I mean, come on.
Everybody in Chicago has an alderman story. All right. You don't know how, well, if you sort of spend 2 hours on the phone with your alderman because the street light on your block is out, it went out in Easter, still out on New Year's Day, that's the frustration. So when a city of 2 million and you're killing aldermen, now when I mentioned the premise of Fall in other places, oh, then polite claps. Oh, it's wonderful. When I say it in Chicago and I say, I'm killing aldermen, yes. I mean, yeah, okay. So it was fun. It was fun doing it. It's fiction. I'm not going out in the city hall and, mowing people down. I mean, it's just the book. But, Chicagoans get a certain amount of satisfaction out of it.
And there is an element of snarkiness to your writing, I have to say. There are some comments in there that are really, I mean, very pithy in some instances, and in other instances, pretty snarky. And you pick, these little tabs I have here that I'm going to mention some of them. But one of the things that happens in this book, and you can see here that there's money falling through the sky, is that the bodies are found with
Dimes on their body, down their throat, in a pocket. So 30 pieces of silver, a betrayer's payment. And that just sort of came to me, and my pantser, of course. So that came to me while I'm sitting down there, 5:30. The body's there, blah, 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 blah. And then I put the dimes down the throat. I thought it was genius.
It was,
Yeah,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely.
So, and enjoyed it because now I'm excited because now who could possibly want these aldermen dead so badly, and then to sort of top it off with 30 dimes on their bodies. So that sort of keeps me going 5:30 in the morning.
Well, we had one, he wasn't an alderman, but he was a state politician who kept money in shoe boxes. So, there you go.
Yep.
But it really does fit in. And there's a classic line in here where the sergeant says, since when do murders have to have themes? The dimes. She's really annoyed by these dimes. It's like, why are they? But serial killers often have themes.
Yeah, they've got their own methodology, right?
Yeah.
Their own kink and whatever that is. And so that was also interesting for me to sort of figure out what kind of mindset we're talking about. So I had to stop at a certain point to sort of look up serial killers and what makes them tick and what they're working off of. And once I sort of have that information, I didn't want statistics or anything, but just the way they think, why they approach certain people as opposed to other people. And then once I had that information, I sort of file it away and then go. But I had to stop and sort of see whether or not I was on the right track or not, and I was. Good to know.
Themes. There are a number of themes in this book. And I think in all of your work, there's a theme of trust. There's a theme of respect. There's competition. I mean, there are two, at one point, there are two murders. So Harriet and her partner are working on one case, and these two other cops with marvelous names, we'll get to those later, are working on the other case, and they're competing. Who's gonna get the first clue? Who's gonna track it down? We're gonna share everything, they say. Well, yeah, but how timely is all of the sharing? But there's a theme. I was interested in the theme of trust between the partners, trust between Harriet and Vera and the rest of the guys, the rest of the team, trust in their instincts. Talk about instinct.
Well, it's a tough job, as we all know, and trust makes a difference between whether or not you're going to live or you're going to die. I mean, you've got to trust somebody that you are paired with, either somebody you choose or somebody who is assigned to you, to back you up. So now you're going down that dark alley at 2 o'clock in the morning. You don't want somebody that you're going to question. All right. You're going to have to know that that person's going to be there for you and you're going to be there for that person. So that's a big part of the job that they're doing. So yeah, I had to sort of put that in there, but I got that from the cops themselves. I mean, they don't want to work with somebody who's sort of, wishy-washy and, coming in late and taking a job for granted or whatever. They want somebody who's solid. And if they can look at you in the eye and say, okay, yeah, I can trust my life to you and you can do the same for me, then we're good. Anything less than that, it's not going to work. And so I incorporated that into it. And yeah, that's a very big part of who Harriet is. It's a very big part of who Detective Lee is and all the rest of the team too. They become a family.
Yeah.
And they're close-knit sort of a group, and they all rely on each other.
The dialogue is marvelous. I mean, you can just hear these people chatting back and forth, and it's the kind of, again, snarky, sharp, crisp. Do you say the words out loud, or do you just think them when you're writing dialogue? Your dialogue is magnificent.
It can happen both ways. If I'm sort of tongue tangling with a sentence, I might read it out loud or talk it out loud and see whether or not it scans. But usually it's in my head.
Do you ever wake up at 3 a.m. and say they'd never talk like that?
Yep.
Yeah. And then what do you do?
I have to fix it. I mean, you go back and you delete and delete and delete and fix it until it sounds right. And my brain wakes me up at 5:15. Actually, I know 5:30 is my time, but I got to get a chance to get my V8 juice and everything ready, my Twizzlers. And so, but if I don't need an alarm clock, my brain wakes me up at 5:15.
Wow. And then there's the question of respect. I mean, it's not just trust, but it's respect for each other too. Do those things go hand in hand?
I think so. Yeah, like with this partner that I gave her right off the bat. I mean, he doesn't respect her. She respects him to a certain degree, but they are like oil and water. But they
Yeah.
still have to work together. I mean, every cop doesn't like the other cop. I mean, but you might not even like the person you're partnered with, but you have to work with that person. And you have to sort of find a way to sort of create this partnership that works. whether or not you like them personally, whether or not that's your kind of person, somebody you would invite to your home. You have to work with them. You have to respect what they're doing. They have to do the same for you, and you have to trust your life to them, and they have to do the same to you.
What was interesting though is there's an encounter between or conversation between Harriet and her partner, Vera, and it's obvious that they know very little about their personal lives. They're trusting each other with their lives out on the street, but not sharing certain things. And that there was a bit of a tension there. Uh, how do you explain that?
I like tension. So I didn't want it to be easy right off the bat. I mean, this is a new partnership. She got rid of the old guy. They didn't get along at all. But this new partnership is the one that's going to be the foundation for the series, as hopefully. And so I didn't want it to be too easy too quickly. I didn't want them to sort of meet each other and all of a sudden they're Laverne and Shirley. I wanted them to be sort of feeling each other out, finding out what the other one's made of. This one being the positive, the negative, this and that. I wanted it to be a push and pull in this relationship. And so, no, they don't know a lot about each other going in. They just work together. They're on the team. They have to solve this murder, and we're partnered together. This is what we're going to do. Let's go. They will learn a bit about a bit more about themselves in Echo. In fact, they get a little closer in Echo, and they hopefully they will get closer in the fourth book too. So they will probably be finishing each other's sentences by the time the fourth book drops.
Well, the huge problem that I mentioned that Tracy drops in Harriet's lap midway through, Vera knows something's wrong. She knows something's up. She can sense it. And she pushes. I can help you. I'm good with this. And Harriet won't tell her. And there's a reason for it, and it's a legitimate reason.
Yeah.
From her perspective. But it's real interesting because here's Vera. Oh, please let me help you. And she won't.
Yeah, I love that. I like the fact that they are like oil and water kind of to begin with. And then she's pushing, she's pulling. Harriet's quiet. She doesn't even talk to me most of the time. Most characters yak in your head all the time. You can hear them when you're not even writing. Harriet, zip. And so I had to sort of dig for her. I put on a helmet, little light on it, and I have to dig for her character. And Vera had to do the same thing because Harriet doesn't talk. Harriet's got all of this internal stuff going on. She's here to do the job. That's all she's here to do. Leave me alone. Let's go. And Vera will not let her do that. And so that push and pull, that tension, that conflict, that pulling out and her drawing back is a wonderful thing to sort of write for a writer because you're always digging and trying to figure out what's going to move the needle. And so I'm enjoying it. I don't know how readers take it, but I like sort of figuring out what's going to make them move. That's what we always sort of try to do, what's going to make a character move.
Well, it's very interesting because earlier when we were talking at dinner, you said you don't even know what a character arc is. And I'm saying, hello, all of your characters have arcs. It's so obvious. I mean, it must be just so intrinsic to you that you're not even, cognitively aware of the fact that you're giving them this arc, these movements, this
I
growth.
didn't even know they had themes in there until you mentioned it. I mean,
I've got them written down.
I know.
Trust, respect, competition, resentment.
Okay. If you say so.
Hello, there.
I don't
I was reading
don't
it,
write
I'm
like that.
taking notes,
I write characters. I early on when I was taking these writing classes, they made it pretty clear that there were character-driven books and plot-driven books, and I knew right away that mine would be character-driven. And so that's where my interest and my focus and all of my effort is going into characters. And so when I put these characters on the page, I'm sort of following them along, putting them in situations that I think is going to sort of show me something about them. And so that's what really sort of gets me sort of excited. What's this character made of? How long do I have to steep this tea bag in order to get the real person out of them? And so, that's where my interest is. I don't think about themes. I'm glad they're there.
You think about names. Let me run some of these names past you. Samansky, Kelly, Bigelow. I love Bigelow. You drink tea, right? No?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Lonergan. And then there are the two, Piertowski and Tennant. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, these are really Chicago names. And then I thought, they're also Cleveland names, and they'd probably work in Buffalo, and they'd work in Milwaukee. They are Rust Belt names.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking, where else would they not work? They wouldn't work in San Diego. They probably wouldn't work in New Orleans. They wouldn't work in Tampa. No, I mean, these are names that belong to all of us up here. And there are great characters that go with these names. So how do you find your names?
I don't know. I just sort of look popular names, 1965. I'd go by their ages. So Samansky is what, late 50s. So I will sort of do the math. And it's 2024. Let's go back, 50 some years. What popular names were there? And it's not-
Samansky was not a popular name 50 years ago. I'm sorry.
well, that's a Chicago name, but I'm looking for first names. I'm looking for names that sort of fit this character. Now, Samansky is like 58 years old. He's got a couple more years before he retires. He's jaded. He's curmudgeon-y. He's a really tough guy to work with. Not a lot of yucks and chuckles. I mean, he's a really serious sort of curmudgeon-y guy. And so I needed a name that fit that. And so that's where Samansky came. You cannot mess with the Samansky.
Yeah, this is true. What about Bigelow?
Bigelow is big and black like a linebacker. Okay, and they call him Biggs.
Mhm.
Okay, so he is himself. He does not take anything from anybody. He's been there long enough to know how the game goes, and he's not going for it. That's Bigelow in a nutshell.
There's a classic line in here. I have to read this because I just about laughed out loud. I wanted to know where you got this from. So at one point, Pienkowski says something. Shaw's got motive. It doesn't matter what he says. And opportunity. Apparently, he doesn't talk very often. He's pretty quiet. So he says something in this room full of cops. And it says the whole room turned to look at him as though a rock had suddenly burst into song. I underline that. I thought that was so fantastic. I mean, where do you get ideas? A rock bursting into song.
I would like to say it came from this place or that place. I have no idea. I'm 5:30. I'm in my chair with this laptop, and they talk to me. So I get to the scene where that scene happens, and that's what he would say. And so I put it down.
Yeah, and you can just see all these people, their heads just turning and looking at him. It's just marvelous. And there's another thing in here that I wanted to share because I thought, why do cops eat donuts? Okay, Tracy tells us it is because, and this is a marvelous scene where, which one was it? Bear with me. Oh, yeah. This is the sergeant who's very Irish. She's got stuff all over her,
Yep.
office.
Shillelaghs.
But she's also very tough and she's no nonsense. And she has to talk to this little child. And she says, "You know why cops like donuts?" Little Zoe shakes her head and takes another donut bite. "Because we're busy people and you can eat a donut fast. They go well with coffee and they're cheap." So now you know the answer to why cops like donuts. I loved that line. I thought that was just marvelous. And there's another one in here where this is also the sergeant. Now, again, remember now in Chicago, it's like 23% of leadership are female officers, which is pretty cool. So here is the sergeant. She was always cocked and ready in case the extraordinary thing happened and the city ran out of beat cops and she, Sharon Griffin, had to chase a perp down in the streets. The city runs out of beat cops. There are 11,700 sworn officers. I mean, lines like that are just marvelous. Very, very smart
I wish I'd
writing.
planned them. That would have been nice.
Do you ever even remember writing them?
Nope. Once I finish one book, I'm done. I'm on to the next one. So the readers will come up and see, "Oh, remember the part where not okay." Oh yeah. Not really.
Yeah. Advice for those in the audience who are writing books or would like to write books.
Well, just keep writing. Just do it. You have to be in your seat to do it. You have to be focused to do it, and you have to make the time to do it. So if you want to write, you have a desire to write, You have to write. No excuses. 5:30 in the morning. Well, no, you don't have to get up that early. If you write better at the evening, write in the evening. An hour, 2 hours, as much time as you have. But you have to be there to do it. So keep at it.
You're proof positive.
I've got a rejection file about that thick where I just sort of kept them and kept them and kept them as a great motivator. And when your time is right, when your time is there, you'll be ready. But you have to be there to do it.
Well, but the other thing, the other secret that you mentioned earlier is that you also work on your craft, and that's what you did. You weren't just writing the same thing over and over. You were improving and making it better and making it better.
Yeah, I took every class I can possibly take, every seminar I could find. And then, but at a certain point, you have to stop. You have to sort of believe that you've got the foundation that you need. And then you're standing on the edge of a mountain and you have to just sort of leap, because the real forward momentum is the actual writing. So unless you're sort of getting to those keyboards or that pen or whatever and working and moving those words around, that's where the real learning starts. So you can have that foundation, you can have that craft on all those elements in your head. That's your stockpile. But the real education, the real forward motion happens on that page. So do it. Just do it. Like Nike, just do it.
Can I ask you which of your characters you like the best?
In the first series, the PI series, I like the pickpocket. He's 4'10". He dresses in the same color all the time, blue, black, gray. He's got the fingers of a surgeon. And she sort of takes stuff out of Cass's house every time he's there. Her remote from her television, stuff out of her house, bowls and stuff. He just can't help himself. I love him. He was supposed to just be for one scene, but I couldn't get rid of him. I love him. His name is Pouch because he has a little fanny pack. That's where he puts his loot. And so that's my favorite character in that series. In the second series, the Harriet Foster series, I think probably Kelly. He's a overeducated sort of a cop. You wonder why he sort of took this job as opposed to something else. And he sort of quotes Shakespeare lines to Samansky because he knows he hates it. And so I love the fact that he needles this old cop 24/7. He gets a great kick out of it. So do I. And so he's my favorite one in the second series too. I like the weird ones.
It's interesting that you didn't name your protagonists.
She's fine. I'm just okay.
She's okay. They're all right.
But Kelly's got an evil mind. I love the fact that he sort of needles this. Oh, he knows it bothers him. He knows he just, and I love it. I love it.
Do we have questions?
You were talking about names. I love Waterman's name. Drives me crazy. I was so excited starting the second book, but I had a long ride, so I got the Audible. Did you pick the reader? Because I love her. I think she's wonderful, and she does a really good job of differentiating between, especially Barry and Vera, where you feel like you're sitting in the room listening to them.
I didn't. The publishing house picked her. She's great. I think she's wonderful. But no, I had absolutely no input into that at all. But I'm happy with it. Yeah.
Like I'm sitting there in the car listening to the back and forth between different cops, and she is able to nail the cadence and the conversation in a way that I think not every reader can do. So whoever picked her, great. I felt like I was there, like in the police room.
Awesome.
Or a sharp's face. So
Cool. Thanks.
Yes.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you about the love.
Oh, thank you so much. You know what? I'm stubborn. That's probably the Chicago thing. You know about this. But the more rejection letters that I got, the madder I got. And working off of spite is a wonderful thing. Try it sometime. Try it sometime. I mean, nothing motivates you more than somebody telling you you don't have it. You know you have it. Maybe you've gotten to the point where you can sort of make other people see it, but you have to keep going. You get madder the more rejection letters that you get, and you're just going to prove. In fact, when I won the Sue Grafton Award for the second time, we were in the ballroom, and one of the editors who had rejected me early on was sitting there. Now, I could have named her. I remembered her name because I had it on the rejection letter in my file, in my drawer where I kept it. but that's great satisfaction to know that you didn't give up. It's easy to do. Writing's hard, and most people give up because they get so frustrated and it's just not happening. But you have to stick with it. If you give up, you lose. The only way you win is if you keep going and keep pushing forward and prove them wrong. That's what you got to do. Well, I'm a Sue Grafton fan. I love Sarah Paretsky. I love Sarah Paretsky. Ever since 1982 in Indemnity Only. Great fan of hers. Walter Mosley, I love. Sean Cosby, I love. Southern Noir, which was new to me. I hadn't read a lot of that, but I love it. It's so visceral. There are a lot of writers that I absolutely love. I'd read everything. I love everything. Everything opens your mind and expands your understanding of whatever. And so I read all the time. So anybody who's good, even people who aren't good, I love reading. I mean, just whatever, different perspectives, different things, different stories, different characters. You learn something every time. So read everything, read often, keep it going.
I assume you do that in the evening after you.
I have 1 hour bath time. So I write in the morning, work all day. I've like 45 minutes in the bathtub. I take a book or put my Kindle on, beep, and that's when I read. So that's my relaxation time. That's my calm down time. And then I hit it again 5:30 in the morning.
You are disciplined. Other
Or
questions?
nuts.
Daniel.
I was curious, you said you don't write with teams and that Patricia found them, but you did talk a little about competition. And I was curious, since you did interview a lot of police officers about it, did they talk to you about that sort of competition and how it plays out in the real world and how it works?
Well, yeah, because they all are in this for the greater good, right? They're trying to clean these streets up. They're trying to make people safe, serve and protect. It's on the side of the police car. So yeah, they sort of compete with their coworkers. They have an idea they think's going to work. You're sitting over there with your thumb up your ass. I mean, so they're trying to work this thing out. So yeah, this competition is real. And in fact, when I was talking to these police officers, the females specifically, and I was trying to figure out why they would want to do something like this. I was surprised to sort of learn that one said, well, I was a great fan of Scooby-Doo. And so I just sort of figured I'd go into police. I mean, who makes that jump? I mean, Scooby-Doo over here in the van with the dog to running down the alley at 2 o'clock in the morning after a drug dealer. I don't get quite the connection, but it's valid. That's her story. That's her backstory. I went with it. So yeah, competition, yes. It keeps them engaged. They're out there trying to do good. Uh, Most of police officers are great. A couple of bad ones, and we know those stories, but it's sort of a noble profession. And so they are in it to win it. And whatever they got to do to motivate themselves and get them to the next stop, that's what they're going to do. Hey, Nick. Well, I chose Chicago because that's where I'm from and that's where I live and that's what I know. And so as I dump these bodies around the 77 neighborhoods that we've got, um, I sort of go for the vibe and the feel and the smell and the people who live there, the neighborhoods. When I did hide and the serial killer was hiding the bodies all over the place, I actually walked the river walk, and that's how I found that fence that had a hole in it that sort of separated Lower Wacker from this wonderful, glitzy, sort of pristine Riverwalk area with the little kiosks for the bike rentals and all of it for the tourists, right? But on the other side of the fence, the only people who walk there are people who shouldn't be there or mystery writers. So that's where, and you don't know those things until you actually see them. So I walk the streets. I know how that dumpster smells. I saw that rat scurry across so yeah, sense of place is great. Gritty is Chicago, crime is Chicago, corruption is Chicago, and you have to be there to see it and smell it and hear it. And so, I try to put all of that stuff in there. Yes, it's a different name, but it exists. There's that back room there. People from City Hall go there. have their little steak and their martini, get the envelope under the table, and then they go back to City Hall and they do the city's business. So yes, it is there. I won't tell you where, but yeah, it exists.
Lonergan, will we eventually find out?
Yes, in Echo you will. There's a good reason, next December. There's a good reason he slips away in the middle of the day. And it's not what most people think, or what even I thought. I thought he was up to something really nefarious. And then I found a other reason why that might be. So inspiration sparks, things come to you.
If
Different
you
angle.
if you've never been to Chicago and you're going to go there sometime, check out Lower Wacker. I mean, those who know Chicago know what Lower Wacker is, but you know, we're sitting here talking about it, but it's really, and it's been fixed up. It's been straightened out. But basically when the city was designed, ultimately, that was a street below the streets. And it was supposed to be for the delivery trucks to go. Well, of course, the delivery trucks got too big, but there is like a secret city down there, a secret street that you can zoom down, and it's
Then
really
there's Lower
very
Wacker,
cool.
and then there's Lower
Lower
Wacker.
Wacker. Yeah. And then there are the
It's like being in
tunnels.
hell, Lower Wacker.
Yeah. And there are tunnels and there are pedways and there are, you know, so if you think you know Chicago just walking around the streets, you don't know the city yet. Check out some of the lower places there.
where the good
It's
stuff
very
is.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, you're dead. You're dead.
And other questions for our distinguished author here. What will you do I mean, once you're finished with Harriet, you said you don't quite, you know, you have a thought and whatever, but will you do another crime book, another police procedural,
No,
another?
I tried writing other genres like domestic stuff, romance. But if someone always died, so I think this might be my niche. I can't write normal things. It
Yep.
doesn't seem that I can. I mean, I've tried nice little rosy things where people fall in love and have a dog and a pet and everything. I can't. Somebody
nothing's
die. The
happening.
dog's gonna die. Somebody's got to die.
Something has to happen though. I mean, that's the whole thing.
Yeah, but I don't, unless somebody dies, I don't know what would happen. I mean, somebody's got to get it in the neck or somebody's got to, something's going to happen.
Do you have like a file of ways to kill people?
I just come up with stuff. It'll come to me.
Or do the police, when you talk to them, your friends, do they tell you about strange?
They always do. They come up with these, you wonder how these people live happy lives because the memories that they have, the experience that they have, when you have to sort of carry a body bag with a body and a dismembered head in it, and then have to go home to your wife and kids and live that's not a normal thing. And so the cop stories that they tell, I think, basically to sort of process it, right? To sort of get over it, put it in a spot that they can sort of manage it, and still rates of alcoholism, suicides are off the chain. And so we're asking human people, well-adjusted people, normal people, to sort of do the abnormal thing. And I find that interesting. Why? What do you get out of it? What keeps you going from day to day? What keeps you coming back after you've seen something horrendous? A child burned over 90% of their body in boiling water. I mean, these are cases that they sort of work on a day-to-day basis. And then they're expected to come back the next day, the next case, and then go home to their wife and kids and live a normal life. And there's got to be some kind of price, something that has to give at a certain point. And that's what I'm sort of looking for, that thing. What? How? And I sort of put those into my characters and into my stories too, because I'm me trying to figure out why and how.
What pushes them over the edge or what hardens them?
Right, exactly. Which is part of the weight that Harriet sort of carries in the first book, because her ex-partner, she suspected was a suicide, right? She comes into the cop lot and she put a gun to her head and she kills herself, or that's what we think. And so now Harriet's thinking, where was I? Why didn't I see the signs? What more could I have done? And so the guilt, the loss, the grief, book to book to book. And she's got to find a way to sort of deal with that. in addition to all the other stuff that I give her, because it's tense and it's conflicting and it shows us what she is.
So the question would be, how does a cop live with that? How does the writer of all of this live with that?
I'm good. I mean, it's just writing. It's just fiction. I don't have to see it. I imagine it, but that's removed. I mean, I'm in my writing room and with my sweats and my fuzzy slippers, and I'm just sort of coming up with these stories. It's not here. It's not here, and it's not here. So they're the ones that we have to sort of worry about. I can sort of process it. I mean, I go on to the next story, the next set of characters, try to say something that's meaningful or engaging for readers. But to live with that as your job, as your profession, as your career, 10 times worse.
Well, you see why they become hardened and
Yeah.
the dark humor and as you
Gallows
say, the
humor, all
alcohol.
the way of processing it.
Yeah. I think,
The paper clips and marbles that kind of detectives come from, that intrigues me very specific, but yet it also almost becomes a comfort issue as you read the issue.
Because when we meet Harriet, she's sort of living minute to minute. She's on this job, tough job, but she's sort of finding a way to sort of get through the day. And I needed something that sort of marked the time. I didn't want her always looking at her watch because, whatever. But little things, thumbtack, paperclip, whatever, little bits of things that she can put in her pocket to sort of mark the time. And then at the end of the day, that she's made it through successfully, when she goes home to that house that is just that, very little furniture. She has no knickknacks. She has no paintings on the wall. It's a box that she sits in. And I put a vase next to her door that she puts marbles in at the end of each day. And she did that the day her son was killed, and she's kept it up for 5 years. So every day at the end of the day, one marble into the vase. And so that's marking time. That's getting her through, whether or not she realizes that that's probably not the best, the healthiest way to do it. That's what she needs to do to get to the next day. And so that sort of came to me because I don't outline or plan anything, sort of as a spark of what's going to get her to move, what's going to get her through that minute and that hour and that day. Little things, thumbtack in the pocket, paperclip in her hand that she sort of works while she's sort of figuring out this case, the marble at the end of the day. That's what she's got to do right now.
and that I think in a nutshell is why your characters are so human. I mean, they really are just incredibly real people, and they just walk right off the page with you. So I think on that happy note, thank you.
Thank you.
Tracy,
Thanks for
this has
having me.
been wonderful.